Ladies and gentlemen, what is up and welcome to episode number 5 of Rating Recap. I'm your host Gavin Garcia, aka Wingzer, level 110 Demon Hunter. Joined by my co-host Mark Mercasio. How's it
Hey
going, Mark?
guys, I'm doing good. This is Mark, aka Strides, aka 110 Undead Windwalker Monk, and we've got a special guest today. Go for it, Gav.
Yeah, so our special guest is Royce. Royce, why don't you give them an introduction?
Uh, well, I'm Royce. Played Resto Druid for our group probably the past couple expansions.
And
I guess I'm considered the guild leader, but I don't know. I haven't really done a good job of that recently.
you've done good enough, man. Plus, you're the voice. Royce the voice. Alright, we'll go on to the first topic. If your sole purpose in making a guild was to make a harem for yourself, how would you go about doing this and becoming the protagonist? And would you require that people post selfies in a guild Discord?
If my sole goal was what?
Was to make a harem. It's basically like an anime trope where everyone in the guild loves you.
I don't really know, man. I don't watch enough anime to answer that.
Shit, man, don't let everyone else know that. What about you,
What
Mark?
about you?
If my sole purpose was to make a harem, uh, first off, I'd have to create a enticing guild recruitment message. You gotta let them know what they're getting themselves into first, and then after that, you'd hold like fundraisers to get them into that mindset where I'm helping out the guild, so I've got to stick with the guild. But I think I'm running off tangent right now. So, what about you, Gavin?
I'd make them all make me lunch and bentos, and I'd try out each and every single one of theirs, and then rate it off of that. I always knew Royce wasn't a weeb, so I knew this question was gonna be either hit or miss.
Nice.
So we'll go on to the next topic. Oftentimes, guild management is something that a lot of our core players tend to neglect. What is it like being a guild leader, and what are some responsibilities that you tend to do?
Uh, well, I mean, running a guild is kind of like running I don't know, a business or anything that requires leadership. A lot of times, it's just the difficult part with our group is a lot of we have a lot of people that know each other in real life, but not everyone knows each other.
Mhm.
So the hard part of that is you're bringing in people that maybe aren't the most social outside of their group of friends, and you're trying to mesh them with another group that they have no prior experience with, which is what we kind of went through early on. I forget what expansion we started on, but that's where we started, and some things changed along the way. But for a lot of us, I think the thing that happens is there's not enough engagement outside of your original group of friends.
Mhm.
And on a guild leader aspect, it's a little difficult. That's something behind the scenes that you try to avoid because you don't want to create a culture where it's not one specific team, you're all oriented trying to accomplish this one goal. You have different groups, different, I guess, cliques within a guild,
Mhm.
which you kind of want to avoid. And that's one thing that, you know, for me is one of the higher priorities on my list is to avoid a culture like that.
Yeah. Um, Going back to your point about cliques, I know that a lot of times, like Jonah, Mark, Jonathan, and Angelo, they'll form their own sect, while like me, you, Davis, Eugene are pretty much forced to merge ourselves with the rest of the guild members, and that happens almost every expansion.
Yeah. So I mean, like that stuff is hard for I mean, it's not so much an issue for I think us,
Hmm.
but for people that we're trying to recruit, and you know, they don't know us personally, so a lot of times they're gonna take that and be like, hey, they're just trying to do their own thing, and they don't really engage with the people that we bring in, which makes it hard for them to fit in. It makes it hard for them to kind of buy into our guild and trying to progress with us.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I'm sort of trying to make all this supplemental content so that way, because I can't play the game like religiously anymore for obvious reasons, and I wanna I wanna utilize content like this to make us like just talk more and make us more of an active community.
Yeah, and I think that's good. I mean, it's kind of gives people a perspective that they might not get otherwise. Because I we only talk to each other maybe when you're in game, and
Hmm.
it's even limited at that.
Yeah. What about you, Mark? Like, what do you think a guild leader does and like responsibilities?
A guild leader. I mean, there's gonna be a difference between a guild leader and a raid leader. If both of them are the same person, then they're gonna have a lot more responsibilities. But a guild leader, I'd say, is more their responsibility. Their responsibility is more so keeping the guild intact.
Hmm.
Like, I know for sure raid leaders, they gotta make sure attendance is right. They gotta make sure the classes are right to clear a certain amount of stuff.
Hmm.
But guild leaders more so enforcing like there's no sort of issues going on between players, like guild politics and all of that.
Yeah.
At the same time, it's like smaller stuff too, like how are we gonna handle like guild repairs, like basic things like that.
Yeah.
I haven't been a guild leader before, so I can't say much more on that, but I think there's like a key difference on what we're getting at. Like if we're talking about raid leading, guild leading, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Fair enough. Um. So, Royce, so you know like the guild achievements, like the weekly achievements, do you tend to push for those or because I know they help a lot, like they're probably 400 gold each, right?
Yeah. So I mean, ideally, if we had, I guess, the roster, the ideal roster,
Hmm.
the correct setup, everything should kind of flow in a way. So we should be getting those naturally just by people grouping together and just running whatever we need to run, and then uh, that's kind of what on my side as a guild leader I tried to create the culture first, and then you got to create activities, etc., to engage people,
Hmm.
and then a lot of it is just people have to buy into the fact that like uh, you're helping the guild in a way. A lot of people are just kind of selfish about playing video games. Like, hey, I'm gonna do what I gotta do to get to where I need to be.
Hmm.
And they don't really care so much about helping, guild mates, etc. out.
Yeah, like they'll easily just pug like someone equipped enough for like Mythic Plus rather than taking like some undergeared person.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly like that. So running keys this past expansion, like uh, instead of helping out, gearing up some people, it's just like, hey, I'm gonna go plug a group that's like way higher, get better loot, and then you worry about yourself. I'll worry about myself.
Hmm. All right, that's some good insight. A lot of times guild recruitment falls onto one person, either me or you. A lot of times in the past, how do you handle that? Like, do you interview people or do you just like spam trade chat, and just be like looking for good enough people?
Yeah, that's a tough one because we're at a disadvantage just because of where we are, right?
Hmm.
Like most of us are based out of Hawaii, so that that 3 hour time difference normally is it's kind of a deal breaker for a lot of these
Hmm.
people that we're finding on whatever server we're on. So a lot of it's just going to come down to finding the right server that fits with us. But early expansion, pre-expansion, like right now, uh, I pretty much spam trade chat and just pick up whoever's willing to join the guild, because that it's you know as soon as expansion hits, there's gonna be people that maybe they don't even play,
Hmm.
or they lose excitement, they make it to max level and then they just quit or something, or they roll a new character.
Yeah, like Eugene and Davis, yeah.
Yeah, so you expect to lose people, so I always like to just bring in whoever early on, and then we'll kind of whittle it down from that point, narrow down your options and recruit more specific targets from there.
Hmm. All right. Well, that's cool. Move on to the next topic. Um, in Legion, you led a guild without having me as a component. What are your thoughts on how the group went? How can we improve on this? And I know that you guys also did 9-hour raid weeks. How was that overall experience?
Well, I think, overall, our Legion group uh, was it started off rocky because of there was kind of like drama, unneeded kind of stuff happening between our own group of people, our core group,
Hmm.
where half of us like would transfer, half of us kind of were like, and that kind of started off rocky. But as soon as we got going rating, I think our Legion group was probably one of our stronger groups overall.
Hmm.
But it's just bad. We had terrible. I don't know. I guess the culture, the people wouldn't show up to raids. We had a bad raid leader,
Hmm.
and that fell on my shoulders. But as soon as that guy kind of left, we went on for a couple weeks, and then it just fell apart. But I don't remember if we were doing 9-hour weeks. It didn't seem that bad, but I mean, I was pretty much coming home after work on raid night, and then eating dinner, and then maybe lifting a little bit, hopping on and playing for the next whatever 3 hours or something.
Yeah, nice. What about you, Mark?
Um, yeah, I don't think we did 9 hour raid weeks. I think we did 6 hour raid weeks.
Oh.
But yeah, I agree with what Royce said. At first, it was a bit rocky, where getting the people was rough. But once we did start raiding, everything was pretty simple. Until one point where I think the raid leader wanted to sell runs, and half of our guild didn't agree with that. So I think one thing that needs to be pointed out, like when you're raid leading, you have to make sure your whole team knows what you're intending to do. Because we didn't know that the raid leader wanted to sell runs on that day,
Hmm.
and I'm pretty sure half of us didn't agree with that. We didn't want that to happen. Like we just wanted to do what we were doing before, because everything before was going fine.
Yeah.
And yeah, after that, things we had like some new tanks, new people, and then I think what stopped us from keeping going was just boredom. We kept on wiping over and over, and to reiterate what we said like past R&R, we have to keep like player motivation up just to keep us from getting bored from quitting the game, because it's a game. We play it for fun, but I think what stopped us was we just got bored. We didn't have much more engagement beyond that.
Yeah. Um, my experience in Legion, it was. I mean, I went on my own by myself, and I found another guild, and they were a little bit more serious than what we normally do, and it was it was definitely an experience where I want to pull on a bunch of things that I did learn from them. I learned that they didn't let a lot of things get to them, like people not attending and other stuff. They would just kick them out of the guild, kick them out of the guild normally, or talk to them and have an open communication. But I do like the feel of our guild, how like we're all friendly with each other and everyone's willing to help. Like the core is willing to help with everyone in the core, but we do need to work on incorporating other people.
Yeah. Just to add on to that, like our uh, our experience as a group has every expansion has kind of been the same. We start off really strong, and then I don't know, for some reason or another, everyone just kind of quits. So I don't know a way around that per se, but it's definitely one of those issues that it's hard to build a guild when you have that looming over your heads.
Yeah, I think that me and Eugene we talked about it in the last episode, but um, we talked about setting expectations and going to the next expectation. A lot of times we fall over because we go into Mythic Plus or Mythic difficulty, and like a lot of people just don't want to burn out. But yeah, keeping it fresh and keeping it exciting, that's another thing that we definitely need to get better at. Hopefully next expansion we'll just be able to like provide content and make events that are fun enough for people to actually want to play. Well, what are your expectations next expansion, Royce? Like, do you want to kill mythic bosses and all that, or
For me, my I guess personality. I've always been one to set higher expectations. So like, yeah, Mythic, ideally,
mm-hmm.
I feel like that should be everyone's. Well, not everyone's, but I feel like that's my goal as a player. Like, I want to prove that, hey, you can beat this difficult boss, but it takes, I don't know, it takes a team, right? Like, so it's not just my expectations aren't necessarily the end all be all of our guild,
Mm-hmm.
but I'll adjust based on what our group thinks and stuff. But definitely, my personal expectation is a mythic. At least a couple mythic bosses.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. Yeah, I personally too. I want to kill at least two mythic bosses every raid. Like that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, and especially too. I mean, I from when I was younger, definitely Burning Crusades and stuff probably was the high point of my raiding experience. I guess pushing for server first and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, those days are kind of behind us now, and everyone's kind of got their own personal things that maybe keep them from playing and being a hardcore raider. And I mean, I don't want to be considered a hardcore raider already at this point in my life, but it's just kind of like having that experience, knowing it's like, hey, this is where I came from. I feel like I should be able to still do stuff like that now.
Yeah.
Maybe not have as much time, but eventually we'll kill them all. I hope.
Yeah. For me, yeah, like I like having that goal to kill mythic bosses and say that you're one of the best because we dedicate so much time to this, and I like the competitive aspect and the passion that I have for this video game.
Yeah, and I also like kind of just being a known guild on the server. I think that's one of my goals too, is to just kind of have us be like, hey, oh, we heard of these guys. These guys are freaking, whatever, full clear mythic before a lot of people.
Yeah. All right, we'll move on to the next topic. Our loot rules of slash roll have been something that's been perpetually used for our group since our inception. Do you see any issues with this? And this past expansion, you guys did use loot console. Did you think that it was a good thing or a bad thing?
Um, I From my perspective, it seemed like Loot Console was fine.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it wasn't fine, but it definitely takes a level of, like I said, people got to buy into our guild and what we're trying to do to use Loot Console. If it's just a bunch of individuals kind of just coming together, just killing bosses, like it's not going to work because there's going to be too much politics, too much drama over, hey, why didn't I get this piece of loot?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if Mark had any issues with that, but I mean, a lot of times it's just I would try to give gear to people that needed it, but at the same time I wasn't raid leading, so I kind of just let the loot fall on the raid leader's plate,
Mm-hmm.
and he was a little bit harder to get along with for most of us. And I know Jonathan and some others had some issues with not getting loot and feeling like because they put in the effort beforehand and they had better loot, they're being excluded from getting stuff in raids because their eye levels were higher than most people.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if we had to choose though, I think loot console overall is best for progression, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
because we can target specific things that we need to upgrade for people. Maybe it's a best in slot and say, hey, we'll give it to you this week and then kind of go from there.
Yeah. In my opinion, I personally like loot console 2 better than slash rolls because you can gear out people that are like performing less, or it could be a huge upgrade for them. Um, but I do agree with the point. Like, yeah, I'm coming to the raid. I put all this time outside of the raid, so that way I can raid, and then I'm like getting punished because I'm so geared. Mark, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think we all have the same idea. What's the point of working before a raid if we're not gonna, if all the stuff, all the work we've been doing gets brushed aside for someone who didn't put as much effort in
Hmm.
just because they have a lower eye level. But loot console works if it's like an equal amount of effort from all the players. But if not, then like one person can just be like laxing, doing his own thing, comes into the raid only to raid, and then doesn't really read up on his class or anything. And then just because he has lower gear, it's it's more like, hey, maybe if we give him more gear, it'll help out his DPS just a little bit. But then if he doesn't even know how to play this class, like what's that gonna do?
Yeah, I think
I think
I think that things like that require too much management from the raid leader end. Like,
Mm.
I don't really care that much to like track GDKP and all that. So like, I really like the slash roll, even though like it's like low effort.
yeah, I kind of avoids unnecessary drama too over loot, but it's just at times it's kind of just like detrimental, I guess, to the overall group.
Hmm.
But that's more, I think, an issue if we were trying to actually be a hardcore progression guild. But like for casual stuff now, it's kind of anything would probably work.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're going casual, there's always personal loot, and we can always give away gear that's better for us to like lower.
Well,
Yeah,
we did try personal loot in Warlords, and what sucked was like if a boss dropped only one piece of loot when it could drop three. So
Oh yeah.
there's that.
yeah, and I think like some we're probably gonna end up coming to some sort of hybrid system with loot console and roll.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's I probably what we're gonna end up with.
Yeah. I had this theory back in the day where you would each player would have two tokens to roll with, like a high priority token and a low priority token. So like if we killed the first boss and you used your high priority, you wouldn't be able to use your high priority on the second boss. But that might be too complicated.
No, I mean that's kind of like I think ideally some sort of DKP system ish with loot console would probably work, but that requires a guild that has people on the same page
Hmm.
and people that buy into kind of what we're trying to do, you know?
Yeah. You just want the gold, yeah, Royce.
But that's one of the issues we've had, right? Is like not having gold or like not having ideally I'd want to be able to provide like, feast, pots, flasks, stuff like that in the guild, enchantments, whatever.
Hmm.
But we just don't have gold ever. That's why like selling runs, I wasn't opposed to it at the time. Like I think the timing of it was terrible. Like we shouldn't have done it the week that we did it. But eventually down the line, like selling runs, stuff like that, getting income, and I think that makes people happier too. Like having like a shit ton of gold, doing whatever the hell they want with it.
Yeah, and like not necessarily splitting it even with everyone, but like a good chunk of the profit going towards the guild, right? Is what you're getting at.
Yeah,
Cool. All right, we'll move on to next topic. A lot of times, members in our group want to bring alts into the raid and or switch their main tunes over. What steps do you believe need to happen if this becomes an issue, and where do you draw the line to say no?
are we just talking about David right now, or
Well, like David's an example. Davis in the past from mage to monk. Jonathan, he'll bring his shaman sometimes because his main is so geared already.
yeah? I mean, I'm not opposed completely, but there's kind of like a time and a place, right, for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, So if we're trying to do stuff and gear other people up, maybe you shouldn't be bringing your alt because uh and I mean unless we're farming and everyone's kind of already geared, then it's like, hey, well, maybe we'll just do an alt run, but it'll be specific, like, hey, this is an alt run, bring your alts if you want to. But I don't think we should be mixing it too much unless there's an absolute necessity. Like if we're lacking a specific class or a role and we need to fill it, and you bring your alt, we'll definitely gear you up faster if we need you to fill that spot.
Hmm.
But like switching classes just because you're too geared, I mean that's kind of it's a touchy subject because you did put in the effort on your own part, but I feel like you should just play that class and just help the rest of your team out, right?
Yeah. Well, what if it's the beginning of the expansion and like they don't like the class? For example, I played warrior tank in the beginning of Warlords, and then I swapped over to paladin because I hated freaking warrior.
Yeah, I mean I have no objections to that. It's just kind of if they're gonna do that, they just have to kind of get their guy up to speed on their own time, and then maybe once they're comparable, then you swap their raid spots. Like, hey, you'll go from like warrior tank to whatever tank
Mhm.
once you have the gear required.
Yeah, that's fair. Um, yeah, I think when I was writing this question, the biggest grievance for me was when David swapped from mage to DK when his mage was already extremely geared. I think situations like that where I understand that the player wants to be happy because they find more fun with another class, but at the same time, there's a bunch of time and progress that as a group we put onto your character that just needs to be respected. In my opinion, I think that if you want to swap mains, you should gear up your main so that way it can perform at least close to 80% of what your main does. And if we do struggle on a progression kill or if we're struggling on a boss, understand that you will be asked to potentially swap back to your other character just for that kill.
Yeah, I mean that seems like a good way to handle things. But I don't think we've had too many issues, I guess, with that. I mean, David is probably our biggest culprit, but we've never really geared him to the point where he's had a lot or been one of our most geared players and switching characters. He's always kind of been at the bottom
Hmm.
gear wise and switching characters to another character that doesn't have any gear. So
Yeah. What about you, Mark?
I don't really mind. I mean, I only mind if you're gonna bring in an alt in and then some other like main core member needs the gear.
Hmm.
Like it's only right if you give it to the main core member. But yeah, we don't really have problems with this kind of stuff. Most of the time we bring in alts, it's just a fun, not really serious raid. Like we've already cleared that raid before, and then we're just bringing in the alt just cause
So what you're saying is I can swap to monk tank if I wanted to, right?
I wouldn't mind.
All right, I like where this is going. All right, we'll move on to the next topic. Our raid composition is very static and oftentimes not optimal, resulting in melee heavy DPS. If you could pick a raid composition, what would your team look like?
uh I mean it's hard to say now. But you want I feel like a pretty even split. But it's always gonna be based on where I mean our I think our core group always has a spot in our group,
Hmm.
which makes it, a little bit harder because uh we all play whatever class, and it doesn't really we don't think about that kind of like roles per se
Hmm.
when we're choosing classes. Like uh if we're starting this new expansion, like, hey, everyone's gonna choose a class. We're not choosing it based on what roles we need to fill. We're just choosing it like, hey, what do we think is fun?
Hmm.
So ideally, we'd kind of plan that out a little better and fill the melee DPS and range DPS, and then have our tanks have our healers. But it's kind of just expansion to expansion. We've kind of just done whatever, expecting certain roles to be filled automatically, and I think that's kind of like not great for this kind of thing, especially with our goal of rating and etc. But I don't know what your thoughts on kind of planning that out beforehand.
I mean, in theory, we would at least want to establish at least two healers and one tank, right? I mean, I I've kind of fallen in love with the tanking class, and I'm glad that Legion gave me a chance to step away from it. But I am ready to take up that mantle again. I'm not sure about you and healing. Um, I know that Jonah is going to perpetually play healer as long as he freaking breeds, pretty much, because he likes it so much. Um, Regarding the melee heavy DPS, I do wish that players would play classes with decent op specs in the event that we need to flex one night, like swapping to a healer or swapping to a tank, because I understand that pugging is there, like picking up a random member is there, so that way we can actually continue. But I like keeping things to our group. I like keeping it consolidated to a guild.
Yeah, I mean, I like keeping our group. Healing for me is just kind of like, yeah,
Hmm.
I filled that role because that's what we need. Not necessarily because that's what I want to play, but it's because as a group we need healers. So I'll sacrifice a little bit. It's not like it's boring, but it's just something different than what I would like to do. But ideally, I think two tanks, being our main tank, raid leader, and uh, I ideally I'd want one of our core groups to be that off tank, so we don't have problems with that in the future. Because I think a lot of times what kind of kills us is that we don't have. I think every expansion we've gone through, we've never really had an off tank.
Yeah, we always we always fall through because one of the tanks ends up quitting, and then like it's like, well, I don't want to fight another tank. Like this is too hard.
Yeah. So I mean, if one of our group would do that, I mean, I could always tank off tank, and then we just have to find someone else to heal,
Hmm.
which I think David would be the primary person to fill that spot. Or he could even tank, but he just kind of doesn't even know what he wants to do.
Yeah. Well, in my opinion, I think the ideal raid comp would be like everyone playing druid or hunter, so that way everyone can fill in all the roles.
Yeah, just have a 15-man group of all druids. You'll be fine.
We don't need plate. What about you, Mark? What would be your ideal raid comp?
Uh, minimum of three healers, two tanks. The by raid comp, do you mean like like class specifically, or just
Uh, well,
roles?
I guess however you want to interpret it. Me and
Porque no los
yeah,
dos, yeah.
Porque
Okay.
no los tres.
Well, for tanks, I'd go with first tank would be a druid, bear tank.
Would you want him to be a Zandalari troll?
Yeah, why not? And then for the other tank would be ideally a blood death knight. For healers, I get a druid, shaman, and oh wait, actually, let me take that back. I'll take a druid, paladin, and a monk. Mistweaver monk.
Nice.
And for DPS, I'd get fire mage, affliction warlock, shadow priest, and maybe an elemental shaman.
Huh.
And for the rest, I don't know how many spots I have left
It's
over.
okay. Why
Two,
not a hunter?
but yeah, oh, I forgot about that class. I think, yeah, I don't know actually. I haven't seen the how the new classes are for the next expansion, so that list isn't gonna be like completely accurate.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna have more ranged for sure because a lot of the mechanics fall onto that range group. That's why whenever you're plugging, it's always asking for looking for range DPS for so and so, not so much melee DPS.
Yeah. I mean, in the past, there's only been a handful of fights where our melee overload has pretty much crippled us. But it's a good thing that a bunch of our ranged DPS players are so addicted that they just grind out and eventually they pretty much output probably like 150% of what a normal range DPS character does. So eventually we'll beat it out. But whenever we do hit those melee intensive fights, we tend to do hit those walls a lot longer than what normal raid comps do. Yeah. All right, we'll move on to the next topic. Um, as a collective unit, we tend to have a lot of similar tropes to rivals. We push each other not by having a common enemy, but by competing with our friends in order to unlock our next level. What drives you, and who is your main rival in the group? Who is your Sasuke, Vegeta, Katsuki Bakugo, or Gary Oak?
Well, I mean, there's only two healers really, so it's just me and Jonah. So I mean, it's hard to say because like I feel like Jonah's really good at healing with his paladin, and it's just class mechanics wise, we do different things as a resto druid and a pally healer. Uh, so I mean, I don't really consider myself a rival. I mean, like I'm sure if the role like if he were healing as a resto druid, he probably could out heal me, no doubt. But it's just
I like the confidence,
I
Royce.
fill in. I fill in. I'm more concerned about like filling in that role that we need. Not and then I could improve. I feel like I definitely could improve at playing wrestler here, but like it's not one of my highest priorities. But it's just as long as we're killing bosses and progressing, and it's not falling on my performance, then I really don't have too much of an issue getting out healed by Jonah. I mean, like on those two on fights that we could trank twice, then I'd be like, hey, yeah, I'm kicking your ass, Jonah. But like for the most part, it's like I'm not too worried about it.
Just trank your trap card. Like,
Yeah, like if you need me to at the end of the fight, if we're about to kill it and then I still have trank, I'm like fuck it, pop it, and then I'll just boost my HPS up a
You
little
can't
bit.
tell Jonah your secrets,
yeah.
man.
Yeah, yeah, I see Jonah like cheating sometimes, man. But I mean, my my competition is more the
The boss.
mm, well, I try to rank in percentiles on fights. That's more what I'm concerned with compared to out healing Jonah. But ranking higher kind of means I have to out heal him. So
Yeah. So are you happy that you have a competent healer in Jonah in our group?
yeah, I mean it's nice too that he's gonna heal every X pack pretty much, which is kind of feel like helps a lot because well, I don't feel like healers are hard to find as it's not as difficult as finding a good tank. I feel like, but yeah, it's good that we have a healer that like has proven that he can solo heal a fight after I die.
All right. What about you, Mark? Who's your rival?
It depends. It changes from time to time.
Does it depend on the anime arc?
Depends on who's at the top of the DPS meters at that boss fight.
Nice.
So I think most of the time it's gonna be Jonathan. Other times it's gonna be Angelo. Either of those two are gonna be my rivals for that time
How'd you
being.
feel when I came to
And
that raid and I kicked your ass in DPS?
I don't remember that moment.
Remember you? Oh man.
I don't recall.
I'm gonna roll a DPS class and beat you this X pack.
For me, my rival is always when I look at the meter, I always see who's the lowest DPS, and I think, man, it'd be so sick if I fucking kicked that guy's ass. Like Mr. Pandari was so
But
fun
no.
when Mitchie and Davis were just super junk at the game, and like I would, be below, they would be below me in DPS, and I was like, man, I felt good, but I feel shitty that our DPS sucks. Yeah. All right, we'll move on to the next topic. Um, do you watch Rating Recap, Royce?
I've watched your first two episodes. I mean, the 40-minute episode with Eugene, I haven't listened
Oh,
to.
you should definitely hear that part where we talk about who he would save, because that's funny.
I don't know, Eugene. Eugene was one of those glue guys that we had back in the day, but he quit on us.
Yeah. All right, he'll come back. I don't know. Um, so outside of rating, how much time do you think? How much time would you be happy about people dedicating time to gearing their character and all that?
I mean, I don't expect a lot.
Hmm.
It's just as long as they, because like it's gonna vary, right? Some people are gonna get drops, some people aren't. But as long as they're putting in effort and they're getting like are consistently upgrading their eye level and etc. or learning mechanics or getting better at respective classes, you know, I don't really care how much time necessarily they put into it as long as they're highly competent in what they have to do.
Hmm.
I mean, I know you guys definitely put in a lot of time. I don't know if it's like AFK time or if you guys are actually playing or not, but I see you guys on a lot, and I mean, I feel like a lot of people don't have, or they just don't put in as much time as you guys. But I feel like as long as they're competent, there shouldn't be any
Yeah,
issues.
in my opinion, I think that as long as a player is able to reach the bar for coming into the raid and performing enough to at least give some potential progress on a boss, I think it's okay for them to come. So like if they want to grind out weekly heroics and all that, that's cool. But if they don't, like that's fine too. As long as they're good enough, is where I'm getting at. What about you, Mark?
What was the question again?
How much time outside of a raid do you think that people should be putting
Oh,
into?
okay.
Like
Um,
assuming that they've
I
done the whole grind in the beginning, like before
uh-huh.
raid releases.
Outside of the game.
No, like you know how like there's a rush
Uh,
for gear in the beginning. Yeah.
yeah. Outside of the stuff, as long as they're like researching, what they gotta do, like know the fights, know their class, know what they need to do to at least relatively max out their performance output,
Hmm.
then that should be good enough. I mean, some people take more time to fine tune what they gotta do than others, so it's all relative to how well you can do it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah. Nah, man. I want them to dedicate their whole life. Like I want them to buy an extra laptop, play during lunch, play during work.
bring it to
Yeah.
work.
Fuck, that would be hype.
That would be the dream.
All right. Well, that's the end of the topics. At the end of the show, I usually let the guests or Mark give any questions or topics of their own. So, Royce, do you have any questions?
Um, I mean, my main question is just like why. Well, I feel like we might have gone over it kind of. We touched on it a little bit, but why the group always kind of falls apart halfway through? Like, why don't you guys like seeing it all the way to the end of the X pack? I
Yeah,
guess.
that's a good question, man. I think for me personally, it's the point that Mark was talking about how um, we just keep wiping on the same boss, and we pretty much get tired of it. Um, I think that a lot of times my interest drops when I see the entire group's interest drop. Like whenever I only see like people show up for raids and that's about it. Like they don't try to do heroics or anything. It's mainly about how much time that I spend in the game versus someone else. Because I think that I spend probably the least amount of time out of all the hardcore people. And if I see that people aren't trying, then that's where it gets tough. Like Warlords was probably like the biggest. No, yeah, Warlords when Ariel Lee was like, yeah, like I only want to come to certain bosses because I can only get loot from certain bosses, and I was like, what the hell? This is stupid already. Mr. Pandaria was more about not getting progress, pretty much, or I mean, I don't know. We didn't even kill Mogushon Vaults when it was normal tier.
I think we did.
No, we killed it the week after it got nerfed.
Oh, okay.
And then Heart of Fear, yeah, I think it's mainly just a burnout thing. So it's mainly tackling how to prevent burnout. And I think a lot of that comes from just doing the same thing every single day.
Yeah. Uh, that's why I feel like a lot of it is just we need to have a more competitive nature of things, I guess, like timed runs or something.
Yeah, or like whoever's the top DPS this month gets free wild time or some shit. Yeah, nah.
Well, I mean, we have enough gold in the guild bank right now to do that, which is why if we get money, get gold and stuff, these become possibilities, right? But without people buying into it, it's just which I feel like it starts with us, as a core group. If you guys show that interest and desire to do that kind of stuff with the guild, everyone else, all the pugs will follow. But I feel like that's where we're lacking right now.
Yeah.
But I also, I mean, I guess I kind of wanted to know you guys' thoughts on like I've definitely pushed for a Hawaii guild, I guess, in the past. And after you guys quit this past expansion, I kind of just went on my own and started one. And there's a lot of interest. But what are your guys' thoughts on just kind of having a guild like
I
that?
think that if you're willing to put the time into it and the maintenance for it, and as long as the raid times are reasonable for the core, like I think that we'll all stand behind you. What about you, Mark?
Yeah, if we're able to do that, I'm more than down for that. It's yeah, it's just getting to that point is the tricky part.
Yeah. What was your guys' main reasons for quitting Legion, Mark?
For Legion, I quit because I got bored. It was just me. I remember that moment too. So it was me, Jonathan, and David. We were in Discord chat, and then you're just, I'm over this. Like, we've been wiping on this boss over and over and over. I could be doing something more fun.
Was this in
It's
Emerald
it's that
Nightmare or was
wall.
this in the Nighthold?
Yeah, it was the spider boss, if I recall. We just got bored of it, and then it's like, we could be playing some other game. We could, I think some other fun game came out that's like shiny and new, and we'd, I know for sure we'd have more fun just playing that game over wiping on the same boss. And I want to go back to what we talked about in the previous R&R. Like, it's just keeping that sort of fun aspect in. It doesn't have to be just directly into that game, but that social aspect of just making stories, like telling jokes and all that. That's what keeps me playing. Like, if the time I'm spending on WoW is more fun than the time I could be spending on some other game, then I'd be sticking to WoW.
Yeah, so you don't necessarily like the competitive aspect, you just like being entertained, is what you're getting at, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is what our hobby. We don't do our hobbies too freaking, like, this is our time away
I don't know,
from
Mark,
work.
have you seen
This
my back?
is
I got wings.
Oh man, but yeah.
Man, Mark, you're so non-competitive, man. I want to be better. I want to be better than everyone in anything I do, man.
I mean, I think before I was competitive, but I think I put more of my competitiveness outside of WoW.
Yeah. So why do you think that we quit, Royce, from your outside perspective?
Well, a lot of it is just, uh, I think it comes down to not having the right people in our group, which falls on recruitment and stuff. But a lot of it is just, like you guys said, boredom, right? You guys get bored. Me, I haven't had that issue too much of being bored because, I mean, I want to kill all the bosses, right? I want to full clear stuff. But for a lot of us, I feel like that's not our expectation. That's not their real desire to do like PVE stuff and full clear. But they're the culture and the I guess how we interact with each other has a lot to do with it because I know uh this past expansion like it just totally fell apart once our guild or our raid leader was just kind of a prick and no one like I didn't even like him. Nobody liked him and it just kind of drew everyone away from playing. Like it's like I don't want to play with this guy already.
Yeah, I agree with that point.
And then I remember when Gavin went hardcore mode when we were back in whatever X Pack, and I know people definitely didn't didn't like that,
Amen.
but I had no problem with it. But like going from what we were and then just pushing it a little more, I feel like that's what it comes down to. It's like people have to wanna do stuff as a group, you know.
Hmm. I agree.
But that's kind of another thing. Is like I think our issue in the past too has been the timing of pushing progression versus farming bosses for another week. I don't know if you think that kind of plays a part, but I think that definitely played a part.
Yeah, like I think that our group in when we were struggling on Blast Furnace, I think our group would have like I regret this to this day is I believe we should have locked out on Blast Furnace and dedicated the next 2 weeks or however long it took to kill Blast Furnace because we didn't even down that boss, and because we couldn't down him, like we kind of all just give up.
Yeah, and I think we were all pretty geared at that point. I remember having the 4 set bonus and then wiping on that for like a couple
Yeah,
weeks in a pug group.
yeah. All right, Royce, you got any other topics?
I mean, not really. I mean, if you guys, I just want to know if you guys feel like this next expansion will bring any changes. I guess.
Well, I believe that changes such as rating recap or me creating outside content outside of the game by I want to build a community is what I said in the first episode, and I hope that rating recap and things like this are steps towards that, so that way people can like watch it outside of rating and feel that like, they're part of the community. So I believe that a lot of the changes will come from there, and who knows, it might incentivize people like Davis or Eugene to come back also. Yeah,
Yeah, just bring in that player engagement. That's the key, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'll try and bring in more Hawaii people because I feel like that'll definitely help. I guess our interest if we have a bunch of people that live here and have a community going over here, it'll be pretty fun.
yeah. Well, how big of a how big of a community would you want? Would you want like just enough for a raid? Because we're at like 9 right now.
Yeah, I mean, when after everyone quit, what was it? End of we're still in Legion right now, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, so after everyone quit this past XFAC, like I just server transferred my Pally to I think it was KT, and I just like named it like Ala Moana or something, and I was just spamming trade chat, like looking for Hawaii people starting a guild, and I got up to maybe like 30 something people,
Yeah, man.
and not all of them were raiders, but like it's just the community aspect of
And
it,
you don't
right?
need all raiders.
Yeah,
Like you just need people. To,
yeah. So that's why I mean I don't really care what like hundreds of people. It doesn't matter to me. It's just kind of as long as we have enough to raid every week, I'm fine.
I like that idea of keeping that Hawaii community up, like just recruiting Hawaii people, getting in that membership. I'm not too sure how many people even still play WoW in Hawaii though, but if we can get that going, that'd be
well, we
pretty
got
fun.
3 right here, man.
I don't think you live in Hawaii,
Wait,
man.
viewers don't know that. You're ruining the illusion. Oh, that's cool. Did you end up raiding with that Hawaii guild too?
No, mostly we just did PvP stuff, but I kind of just quit shortly after that because all of you guys were just, or like the rest of the core group was just already done. So I was like,
Yeah.
what's the point? Like I did it for like the only reason I made a guild was mostly for all of us, and then after everyone quit, I was just like, there's no point. Even though I have already established this Hawaii community, it's like it's not as fun, right, without everybody.
That's fair. Cool. Well, is there any other topics that you wanted to bring up?
No, that's I'm
What
good.
about you, Mark?
I'm
All
good.
right. Well, thanks for joining us on this episode. This is actually a lot of fun talking about guild leading and what it takes. Because a lot of people in our group, they don't know. Like they just see it as something that you do, and It's like, oh, this is sick. Why don't we have this? How come this is happening? And there's actually a lot that goes into it. Cool. Well, if the people want to find you, Royce, where can they find you?
I prefer not to be found.
Oh, mysterious.
I'm pretty sure everyone already has me on Battle.net.
Yeah, that's true.
Or you can follow y'all boy Royce on
Hey,
Instagram.
that's where it's at. All right, we'll catch you on next one. Peace.